Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're exploring something that might just change how you think about language itself.
Mm-hmm.
What if, just imagine, a tiny sound, like a single syllable, held the key to human evolution? Or, the very start of language. Maybe even global unity.
It sounds pretty ambitious, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
We're diving deep into the morpheme, and not just the English, in unhappy.
Right, not just the prefix.
No, we're talking about the fundamental sound and related forms, the ones you hear in Arabic, French, Latin, English, even Uzbek.
It's everywhere once you start looking.
Exactly. So the big question is just, piece of grammar, an article, an affix? Or is there something deeper, something biological, almost echoing through history?
Well, that's what makes this so interesting. Traditional grammar often treats these elements like dead structures, just rules you learn.
Memorization.
Yeah. But our sources today, they're based on this, pretty radical Odam Tili theory from the Odam Tili Academy in New York, and they really challenge that view.
How so?
What's fascinating is we're going to look at how a sound we barely notice might actually be a living trace of something fundamental. The Odam Tili theory tries to find the original physical gestures, the needs behind sounds.
So, not abstract logic.
Not primarily. It suggests language started from sensorimotor mimetic encoding. Basically, how our body's actions and senses get turned into meaningful forms. It's about embodiment.
Okay, let's try to unpack that. Our mission today is to really get into this interpretation, figure out how unneeds could be rooted in our biology, our earliest experiences. This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Definitely.
Let's start with the sound itself. The theory says it's not random, right? It comes from something essential.
That's the idea. It links it to one of the most basic things we do, drinking water.
Drinking water? How?
Well, think about it. Humans, unlike a lot of animals, we cup our hands to drink, naturally.
Okay, yeah, creates a little bowl.
Exactly, a container. And that cupping motion, plus the act of drinking, it involves a certain body posture. Your lips tend to protrude. Okay.
I can picture that.
And if you make a sound with your lips in that position...
You get.
And it goes further. The hand bowl shape from the side kind of looks like a Latin U.
Huh.
And from above, your joined hands can look like an O. So the theory suggests this isn't just a sound, it's like a sound memory, a preserved echo of a really primal action, a mimetic gesture.
Wow. Okay, so if you is this echo of cupping, of drinking, what does it mean more broadly? The theory connects it to depth, containment, gathering.
Yes, exactly. It's tied directly to that visual shape, the U, the cupped hand, and that sort of psychophysical feeling of drawing something in. Storage, absorption, collection.
And you can see that in words.
You really can. Think about common words.
Like pull, cup, scoop, full. They all have that U sound.
And they all carry that sense of depth, collection, or containment.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, about these connections we make subconsciously through sound. Why those sounds for those actions?
Well, the theory suggests maybe early humans, or even children, when they wanted water but didn't have it, they might instinctively mimic the drinking motion.
Like a gesture for want.
Right. And if you add sound to that instinctive lip position, the sound that comes out is you.
So you becomes this early sound symbol. A request almost. I want water. That's a powerful idea. A sound coming straight from a biological need and a gesture.
It really reframes things.
Okay, so that's you. How does the theory then build on this? What happens when you add the N sound? What does that do?
Okay, so if you is about openness, gathering, containment, in the Odam Tili system, N is seen as a phoneme of closure, limitation.
Closure, like closing something off.
Kind of. It effectively seals or defines something. It acts to, let's say, cut off or complete a space, an identity, a presence. So if U is this gathered space or depth.
And N is closure, sealing it.
Then Un becomes, a kind of unified containment, a sealed gathering, oneness.
That's really surprising, especially because in English we automatically think of Un as negation, right? Unhappy, undo.
Exactly. That's the standard view.
But this theory flips it. It's saying Un is fundamentally about unity, not plurality or negation.
Precisely. And this, the theory argues, explains why across so many different languages, different civilizations, the morpheme Un consistently points to unity. Not many things, but one thing. It has this deep phonosemantic signature linking back to gathering, containing, making whole.
That is compelling when you think about it, like United Nations.
Right.
Or United States. They both mean single joint entities.
Right.
A federation.
Or just the word union itself.
Yeah.
In Latin or English, it literally means joining parts into one.
Yeah.
And this pattern holds up globally. In Uzbek, Yunan for Greek apparently comes from an older term unan, meaning a unified people.
Yeah.
Italian, Spanish, uno means one, a single unit. French, unité, unity. Latin, unum, one.
Right.
Even in Arabic, think of umma. It refers to the unified religious community, one people bound together.
Every single one of those examples points to a converged whole. Not many. It really does seem to carry that combined sense, where you combine sense, you for gathering, and for sealing it into one.
Mm-hmm. It's encoded unconsciously.
So how does this change our view of basic grammar? Let's take, say, the Arabic unending, the nominative case.
Yes, that's a really crucial example. Traditional grammar just says, okay, that marks the subject. Simple inflection.
Right, job done.
But Odam Tili theory says, no, wait. That marks the presence of a defined unitary object. It's not just a grammatical tag for its role in the sentence. It's a deeper semantic statement. This thing exists as a single contained entity.
So, like Key to the Blend, a book isn't just the subject grammatically.
It's semantically marked as a singular gathered object of meaning, one whole thing.
Okay, and what about French? The indefinite article en for masculine singular nouns, like un livre, a book.
Similar idea. Traditional grammar marks masculine singular. Okay. Odam Tili suggests un marks newness plus unity. It's an instance maybe not known before, but it is whole. It's countable as one.
So unhum, a man, isn't just a man randomly.
It's more like a single instance of the category human, a new unity pulled out from the general concept. It totally shifts how you think about what these everyday little words are actually doing.
And this really highlights why this Odam Tili theory is significant, doesn't it? It takes these things we just rattled off, case endings, articles, affixes that grammar treats almost like dead bits of machinery.
Exactly, like fossils.
And it says, no, these are alive. They have a history rooted in our bodies, in our basic needs.
It's powerful. The U isn't just some random vowel sound. It's potentially a mimetic gesture tied to survival. And un isn't just grammar. It could be this living trace of unity, born from thirst, gesture, and sound combining.
It suggests then that human language didn't start with abstract rules,
but from sensor-motor mimetic encoding, turning physical necessity, bodily experience into meaningful form, sound shaped by action.
So let's wrap this up. What does this all mean for you, our listener? We've just taken quite a journey, haven't we, into the really unexpected origins of un. We went from just a sound to a complex symbol. The core idea, the revelation from the Odam Tili theory, is that un isn't just some linguistic particle or rule. It's presented as this profound phonosemantic symbol of unity. And it's rooted in our most basic human experiences.
That's the heart of it.
So key takeaways. The sound unna is potentially starting from the act of drinking water, cupped hand, protruding lips, acting like a sound memory or gesture for, I want water.
Right. The mimetic origin.
Then the meaning of you itself.
Yeah.
Depth, containment, gathering. We see it in words like pool, cup, full.
A semantic link.
And adding n, seen as closure or negation, turns into un, signifying unified containment.
Yeah.
Sealing. Oneness.
So combination creating unity.
Which potentially explains why it shows up marking unity across languages. United Nations, Union Uno, Umma. And how it gets reinterpreted in Arabic or French to mark a single contained thing or a new whole instance.
Yeah.
So it means our language isn't just random sounds we agreed on. It might be full of these echoes from our earliest days, connecting us, all of us across time and cultures through these shared human experiences, these shared bodily needs.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, that global use of un probably isn't just coincidence then. It could reflect this cross-civilizational memory, containment, unity. Our shared experience of needing and gathering water may be the first mirror of being collective, you know?
That's a huge idea.
It is. And the Odam Tili theory really invites us not just to study language, but maybe to feel its origins. Which leads to a final thought, maybe for you to ponder.
Oh, one.
If this tiny sound un really is a coded trace of our earliest survival rituals, our embodiment, what other common words, what other sounds that we use every single day might hold similar profound forgotten origins? Origins just waiting for us to kind of feel their true source again.
Makes you look at everything differently.
It really does. It prompts us to look at the words we use constantly with a potentially fresh, much deeper understanding.